time has come, my friends, to once again look at what the past 12 months of action cinema have bestowed upon us. We're gonna take it back! I know I've been saying that every year since I started this annual recap, but oh boy, has the past year delivered in spades. #, 2023 fired on all cylinders, with exciting blockbusters, innovative productions, surprise indie gems, the indisputable rise of Chinese DTV actioners, and old masters keeping the flame alive. And surprise, surprise, 2024 took it to the power of 10. Just look at that. We're gonna take it back!
Anything else I can help you with?
Just like every year, my journey through action cinema can take me to all corners of the world. From Australia to the US, from Nepal to Japan, to Egypt, Gabon, and of course India. There is a lot of ground to cover, so this year I decided to change things up a bit and invited cool and interesting people to join me in this endeavor. Throughout this video, you will see some action film critics, academics, and even a couple of industry professionals sharing their thoughts about some of the films released this year. Because what a year for action cinema, isn't that right, Timon?
Hi everyone, my name's Timon Singh. I'm the UK-wide producer for the BFI Film Audience Network, currently doing the Art of Action season here in the UK. For me, I thought the best film was Timo Janso's The Shadow Strays, which was incredible in terms of action. It's been actually a pretty good year. Other shout-outs to Twilight of the Warriors, Dev Patel's Monkey Man, which I thought was great. Rebel Ridge, maybe not strictly an action film, but some great action in it.
Suspect is armed. He goes down. He does not get back up. Chief!
Bad Boys Ride or Die, June 2. The Underseen Land of Bad. If you haven't seen that, I'd really... Obviously, Fall Guy, celebrating the action stunt community, which is what we're doing as part of the Art of Action season. And you know, you can't not mention George Miller, Furiosa. It's one of the best. Anyway, keep watching action films.
Once again, I want to emphasize that the goal is not to make a ranking of any sort, but to offer an overview of the most interesting action films released in 2024.
But I will have my vengeance.
Some of the most noteworthy American action films of the year included Ridley Scott's late sequel to his 2000s Russell Crowe-led classic blockbuster. Gladiator II is an old-school sword and sandal epic that pales on almost every front compared to its predecessor, except the action. Exit the choppy editing of the early aughts, enter wide shots and ambitious visual compositions. Although some of the CGI is a bit dodgy, let's say. Scott does deliver a couple of nice set pieces wrapped in an alright but overall not so surprising tale of decadence and personal revenge. Revenge was a motivating factor for other theatrical releases that left a strong impression on me, like the Jason Statham vehicle The Beekeeper.
Somebody detain this guy.
From David Ayer, a solidly budgeted B-movie that turned out to be more savage than I would have thought. But I think director Liam O'Donnell would like to take over for a moment. Over to you, Liam.
Alex, it is Liam O'Donnell here, writer-director of Beyond Skylines, upcoming Skyline Warpath, and director of the Sharks vs. Orcas film Alphas that I can't wait to share with you guys in the coming months. The film I wanted to talk about this year is The Beekeeper. Given our current news and climate, I feel like you'd be hard-pressed to say any other movie really kind of hit the middle of the angry yet confused American psyche as much as this one. What I feel like it is so smart about Wimmer's script is that it kind of fuses all of the conspiracies on either side of the American political psyche. He's taking the the fail son narrative, instigating a killing machine out of retirement from John Wick, and then they're yes-anding it with this galaxy-brained gusto, to bring in the Cambridge Analytica, Jared Kushner, 2016 election interference, and then kind of weaving that in with the Hunter Biden's laptop, cocaine hookers, 2020 election interference, into creating the ultimate douchebag tech bro villains in this film. And I think that's what's so satisfying about the movie, is that it really cooks. It really cooks. It gets right to the top. He's burning the building down at the end of the first act. They're not going to make you wait to the third act where he's literally taking down the presidential administration. The action was done by Jeremy Marianis, who I believe is 8711, John Wick 4 fame, and it's great. And again, it's not very John Wick in the action wise. It builds on Statham's kind of personal style of very quick, taking people down and having him hit these perfect poses for exclamation point, perfect reaction shots. He's really at the height of his powers as far as knowing, how to look like such a badass on camera and kind of sell all these moments as this ultimate sort of wish fulfillment, which again fuses both sides into, you have the entire right side of America wanting to replace the deep state, but then also cheering for the ultimate deep state operative in the Beekeeper, who is outside of the system and has been installed there to protect it, with his own autonomy, which is perhaps the most American idea ever made. And of course, it's played by a British man. It's not something I would say, you should get your politics from, like most action movies, but I find it to be endlessly fascinating on how it weaves throughout all of this to create something that at the end of the day is just so incredibly satisfying.
So, how long do you think we'll be here?
If there is one surprise I had not seen coming out of Hollywood, it's Transformers 1. I don't know much about Transformers lore, having never watched the animated series and only seen the Michael Bay movies once each. But this new animated effort worked better than anticipated, conjuring up a conventional but efficiently told tale of self-fulfillment and struggle for freedom. I liked the animation and I'm impartial to the character designs, so I thought it was visually quite pleasant with enjoyably fluid and legible action scenes. The writing certainly could have used some fine-tuning, especially in terms of character development. The humor was... well, it was what it was, and the music felt frankly uninspired. But overall, I had a fairly good time with it.
Bite me!
There was also the horror action hybrid Werewolves from Stephen C. Miller, a pure exploitation flick starring Frank Grillo that knows how to make the most out of its modest budget, combining immensely cool makeup and animatronic work with convincing CGI. Set in a world where Supermoon can turn a large number of people into werewolves the same night, it knows exactly what you came for and delivers precisely that. Every budget limitation is turned into an asset, for instance, by exploiting its two main locations to their full potential, with the sole purpose of offering maximum enjoyment to the viewer. Another film that offered maximum enjoyment to the audience was none other than one of the most celebrated actioners of the year, namely Soi Chiang's Twilight of the Warriors Walled In, the highly anticipated adaptation of the City of Darkness manhwa, with action direction from the great Kenji Tanigaki, the man behind some of the coolest action scenes of recent years. Set in the 80s, the plot revolves around an immigrant finding shelter from a ruthless gang in the walled city before things escalate to all-out war between the two factions. The film delivers across the board, as an action epic of course, but also as a human story. It was never going to be a faithful adaptation of the manhwa, for what works on the page would have been unsuitable for the screen, and the filmmaker was right to transform the fantastical world imagined by Andy Seto in which fighters all seem to possess overtly supernatural strength and stamina, into a more grounded, gritty action film that occasionally bends the rules of realism. Finding the right balance between hard-hitting, believable action and comic book logic must have been quite the headache, but it feels like Kenji Tanigaki nailed it, offering a crescendo of on-screen kinetics that progressively shifts from street realism to heightened genre fare in its finale. Kowloon Walled City becomes a character in and of itself, with its vibrant life, its dangers, its people. And Soi Cheung has fun, turning it into a playful battleground. But don't take my word for it. Let's see what stunt professional Aaron Vargas thinks about it.
Hi, my name is Aaron Vargas. I am a stunt performer and martial artist, and I chose to talk about Soi Cheung's 2024 hit Twilight of the Warriors Walled In. The reason why I chose to talk about this is one simple reason. Kenji Tanagaki's action design. As going into a film like this, a challenge for a guy like Tanagaki is, how do you give the audience the goods of Hong Kong action while giving us something fresh? Well, I think his use of camera work and wire work elevate the action to something that we haven't seen before. We've seen old shapes kung fu. We know how that looks like. But how do you show that in a different way? I think his use of wide lenses and getting in tight with the action creates something where the audience feels like they're in the fight. I think also finding moments to peel out though and show stuntmen taking the nastiest wrecks is what we love about Hong Kong cinema. We don't talk enough about stuntmen in Hong Kong fights. When they take those wrecks, that is what we remember. We remember the moments of guys taking nasty falls, hits to the face with a motorcycle tire, everything you can think of, getting thrown through a wall. It's all there on display for us, and I think there's so many memorable moments with the stuntman. I really appreciate Tanagaki understanding that, and also the use of shapes kung fu is just so well done with his really dynamic camera movement, stuff that we've seen in Rurouni Kenshin, but now we're seeing it with handwork. I think it's really, really well done. So yeah, I just think it's one of the most diverse action films out there. It's not just fights, it's storytelling through action. It is impeccable. It's impeccably directed and designed. So I think it's probably the best action film of this year.
And of course, we will be eagerly awaiting the release of the next 2 installments in the franchise, as well as next year's The Furious, an all-star pan-Asian blockbuster directed by Kenji Tanigaki himself. Although Twilight of the Warriors was the most successful Hong Kong action film of the year, it was far from the only one. Filmmakers from the peninsula have been very busy. Herman Yao notably released Customs Frontline, a throwback to 90s Hong Kong actioners for better and for worse. Beyond the phoned-in storyline and unconvincing characters, the film does come out all guns blazing. From the first hand-to-hand duel on a sinking inflatable boat to the final orgy of explosions and harbour destruction, Nicolas choreographed this film like his life depended on it. He throws himself into the fray with wild abandon, taking as many punches as he doles out. His and Yao's formal approach to HK action is traditional in the best sense of the word. Energetic, propelling, and legible, and smartly relies on a strong sense of geography that exploits spatial possibilities. See for instance the intense mid-film car chase. The final 15-minute set-piece is a golden age HK action fan's wet dream that combines shootouts, cat-and-mouse games on and among containers, massive budget naval destruction, and an exhilarating one versus many fight where Tse takes on multiple attackers at once. The action-turned-choreographer will be at it again in 2025 with Derek Kwok's Raging Havoc, another one of my most anticipated films. Other Hong Kong action films of note include the deeply nihilistic and gut-wrenching Category 3 police thriller Bursting Point, from Dante Lam and Tong Wai Hon, a movie film critic Matt Essary was particularly fond of.
But the truth is, Hong Kong action cinema never truly went away. For example, the film Bursting Point, featuring action direction from the legendary Stephen Tung Wai, the man who is arguably responsible for the birth of the heroic bloodshed genre, because he did the action direction on John Woo's seminal classic, A Better Tomorrow. Here, Tung Wai replaces the two-gun mojo and slow-mo elegance of Woo's classic with a brutal, brawling style filled with makeshift weapons, Molotov cocktails, and gory excess. One thing that Bursting Point has in common with the classics of Hong Kong days gone by, besides the presence of Stephen Tung Wai, is a bleak and morally ambiguous tone that felt often lost in modern Hong Kong action films due to government censorship and otherwise sanitized outlooks. But Bursting Point culminates in a bleak and violent finale that ranks up there with any classic Hong Kong action film.
There was also the heartfelt action drama Stuntman from the Leung brothers, starring legendary action choreographer Stephen Tung Wai, the young adult fantasy martial arts film In External, the satisfying action comedy Rob and Roll, and the somewhat cartoonishly simplistic but highly entertaining Go for Broke from Mark Ma. An amazingly dynamic year for Hong Kong action cinema compared to previous years. Here's hoping that the industry can keep the momentum going. On the mainland, things have been accelerating at an unprecedented pace for action filmmaking, especially on the direct-to-streaming front. Companies like Ichiyi, Youku, and Tencent have pumped out dozens of films this year. At the top of the pyramid sits director Pengfei, who has quickly proven to be the most prolific and competent filmmaker of his generation, with 5 films released in 2024, 4 of which are easily worth your time. His best, in my opinion, is Blade of Fury, a propulsive wuxia brimming with energy and scenographic ideas, like this scene where the camera and the fighters adapt the traditional verticality of the genre into more horizontal planes. Main actor Ashton Chen owns the screen, and the production value is of top quality throughout. Close behind, Pengfei also served up hard-hitting urban actioners with the grim and gritty Black Storm, the Zhang Ruxia-led revenge movie Curbing Violence, and the old-school straightforward brawler The Bodyguard. While not always perfect, all these films impress thanks to their energy and level of craftsmanship, especially since they all came out the same year. This cements the filmmaker as one of the most unmissable voices of the genre presently. So if you haven't yet, you gotta hop on the Pengfei train.
在幸福大厦2号电梯，我现在去趟医院。
The man also choreographed the action in Yang Bingjia's excellent Eye for an Eye 2, the sequel to the Chamoy-led wuxia that borrows elements of Baby Cart and Zatoichi. The directing and editing style is rather different, not relying so much on syncing the camera with the movements of the performers, but going for quicker cuts while retaining perfect legibility. But again, don't take my word for it.
2024 was an amazing year for action. And I'm really honored to talk about why Eye for an Eye was one of my favorites. Chinese DTV action, been on a roll for the last few years. And the first Eye for an Eye was really a standout among that whole collection of movies that we've been getting. You know, really visceral ode to Zatoichi and like the blind swordsman archetype. And the sequel only had to really do more of the same to be good. But Eye for an Eye 2 really exceeded my expectations with taking all the awesome action and lead performance of the first one and combining it with a more character-driven drama, more style, a lot of spaghetti western flavor. And of course the action was going to be awesome, and even here it's even more bone-snapping and emotionally charged. But even better is for the sequel, it's not just you watch a Zatoichi homage, it's a Lone Wolf and Cub homage, and a really amazing one too. The dynamic between our lead and young actress Yang and Yu, it really drives the story in a really compelling way, and her grit and performance alongside her adult protector is a treat, especially considering his start as Jet Li's kid co-star. So it brings action, the whole action background, almost a full circle enjoyment for us longtime action fans.
Again, Blade of Fury and Eye for an Eye 2 are among the best action films of 2024, hands down, and I cannot recommend them enough. Pengfei was also choreographer on actor Ashton Chen's directorial effort, The Drunken Prodigy, a pretty cool heir to old-school Hong Kong editing style. Chinese DTVs seem to be the place for action fans nostalgic of previous eras, and for good reason. Muay Thai master Tony Jaa himself was back on our screens in a hard-hitting actioner entitled Striking Rescue. A straightforward revenge tale pitting Jaa against ruthless drug lords, the film tends to only shine during its action scenes, the rest proving to be mostly mediocre, but the action itself is quite good, offering the actor multiple opportunities to display his physical prowess and signature moves. Although the film as a whole isn't too memorable, it is clearly Jaa's best action role in years, outclassing everything he has done in the West. And who doesn't like to see Tony Jaa breaking skulls with his knees and elbows? Striking Rescue's director Chang Si-yi also released a movie called Desperado, an alright product that fumbled the promising premise with an unfocused narrative, but still managed to deliver a couple of pretty kinetic action scenes. Other notable Chinese DTVs include Feng Xiaojun's unusual and unsurprising Blocking the Horse, a riff on the Traveler's Inn trope that veers into formal experimentation through the insertion of operatic elements, Dai Yilin Gorgeous Puppet, which boasts levels production value fit for the theatre, the solid wuxia The Wild Blade of Strangers, starring the far too rare Mark Cheng, as well as Yu Seong's latest forgettably written but really well choreographed film, The Crazy Dad. We mentioned it last year, but since it finally got its American streaming debut this year, let's take a moment to reflect on the solemnity of Lee Bing-yuan's Fighter.
One 2024 action film that stood out to me was Lee Bing-yuan's Fighter. In this film, which follows an MMA fighter's pursuit of vengeance and glory, you'll often see the sort of spectacular stunt work and fight choreography that hark back to Golden Age Hong Kong action. That said, you'll also often get a barrage of other energetic techniques. And here I'm thinking about stuff like rapid cutting and overlapping editing. And overlapping editing refers to when one shot repeats part of the action of the previous shot, generating this stuttering rhythm. On top of the editing, there are bursts of slow motion and speed ramping, a near constantly moving camera, and also a lot of depth staging as well, in which the action moves away from or towards the camera. And depth staging, when paired with the roving camera of the film, frequently generates a really palpable sense of three-dimensional space. All these levels of dynamism at the level of filmmaking, at the level of post-production, and in front of the camera as well in the choreography and stunt work, create this total package that is singularly blistering, singularly kinetic. It is for this reason that I wanted to highlight Fighter today and why it is one of my favorite action movies of 2024.
Another Chinese DTV that got a delayed release on Western shores this year is the pre-World War II Shanghai set The Mob, in which a reluctant heir to a criminal empire joins the fray after an attempt on his father's life. East Asian cinema specialist Hayley Scanlon gives the reason she thinks the film stands out.
There can be few more enticing settings for a film than Shanghai in 1928. Zhao Song's well-appointed action streamer The Mob certainly makes the most of its meagre budget in capturing the opulence of the pre-war city, from its elegant nightclubs to the frog racing that goes on in the back. And he's as concerned with the city's sleazy underbelly as its glamorous exterior, and with shades of heroic bloodshed, weaves a tale of betrayal and counter-betrayal with a series of hugely impressive action sequences, from nasty barroom brawls and expertly executed executions, right through to the epic Battle in the Rain finale.
Director Chris Hu released two films of note in 2024. Second Life is an endearing and entertaining action comedy starring Yuan Shui. Yes, the landlady from Kung Fu Hustle, that's her.
One I want to highlight that I saw on ITV is called Second Life, directed by Chris Kuo. And it's the one of the ITU movies that I think really captures kind of the spirit of old Hong Kong movies. It's ostensibly set in Hong Kong, although it's like a fake mainland version of it. But it does star Yuan Chu and also Philip Ng, who was terrific in Twilight of the Warriors Walled In. He's playing a very different kind of character. in Second Life as an assassin who's gone blind and is trying to kill an old lady played by Yuan Zhu, and eventually becomes friends with her and helps her out against all kinds of assassins who are also trying to kill her. It's a very fun movie. The action scenes use a lot of the environment in clever, kind of old school Chinese opera or Seven Little Fortunes ways, as opposed to the more kind of brutal MMA fights that a lot of like the Pengfei movies are.
Hunt the Wicked, starring Che Moy and Andy On, was a steep step up from the director's previous efforts, presenting shades of old-school Hong Kong kineticism, hampered, however, by an overall fakeness in the photography and too much reliance on CGI. Andy On had a very busy year, headlining other entertaining DTVs like Fury 12 Hours or To Live Through Death alongside Fancy Wong. But his most important film this year was released in cinemas, namely Zhu Zhufeng and Zhu Haofeng's latest martial arts masterpiece, 100 Yards. Yes, I talked about it last year already, but it had only been shown at a couple of festivals and only got a wide release in 2024, finally. 100 Yards combines formalist perfection with cultural relevance in service of a new cinematic achievement in martial arts cinema. The action was in part designed by Duncan Leung, former student of legendary master Yip Man, and is among the cleanest, clearest, most gripping choreographies that we've seen in the last few years, with immaculate sound design and a script that explores the societal ramifications of martial arts. Zhu Haofeng's latest stands as an action film that never glorifies violence, but rather questions it through various lenses.
There are quite a few action movies this year that I liked or even loved, but none have the complete package quite like 100 Yards. It's got it all: jaw-dropping, crisp cinematography, captivating and varied fight choreography, compelling characters, gorgeous backdrops, and pitch-perfect period production design. It's rare to find an action movie that looks this damn good throughout its whole running time while still delivering on the fight scenes. And those fight scenes aren't just exciting, they're thoughtful in the way in which they engage with 100 Yards' themes and narrative. It's not a movie about violence. Instead, 100 Yards is about the act of fighting, and how the tools and forms we use to fight say something about us. Any action movie worth its salt reveals something about its characters through the ways in which they fight. But few do so with the grace, beauty, and conviction of 100 Yards.
It wouldn't be a normal year in the Chinese industry without some massive war epics, and surely enough, Chiang Kai-shek's Korean War movies The Volunteers to the War and The Volunteers The Battle of Life and Death undeniably fit the bill. These are technically dazzling films that deliver dozens upon dozens of breathtaking shots, captured through elaborate logistics, all within a strongly nationalist narrative framework. A third part is already in the works, as the first two have been quite successful in China. However, the most interesting Chinese blockbuster of the year was easily evacuated from the 21st century, a film that could be defined as a soft sci-fi blockbuster, an exploration of teenage angst, a multi-referential pop culture remix, a claustrophobic dystopia, a coming-of-age animation-enhanced actioner, and a silly comedy. In the summer of 1999, following a chemical accident, 3 18-year-old boys discover that they can take control of their 38-year-old bodies in the future by sneezing. Sneezing in the future brings them back into the past. Soon, they must contend with corrupt journalists, deadly organ traffickers, brotherly rivalries, and the desire to never grow up, among other things. This is director Li Yang's first feature in over a decade, and the number of ideas he manages to develop and explore is rather impressive. Most importantly, it surprises by casting a pessimistic look at the future in a seemingly rather defiant take on what it is like growing up in China. With influences ranging from dystopian sci-fi films to Scott Pilgrim and Street Fighter II, Evacuated from the 21st Century is a flawed but enthralling cinematic experience, a poetic, pulpy exploration of what it feels like to realize our childhood is about to end. Science fiction also took hold of the Korean box office for a while this year, with Alienoid Part 2 the conclusion to the first film that came out in 2022. A direct sequel that does not stand on its own, Alienoid Return to the Future is a frantic blockbuster that moves at breakneck pace, multiplying action scenes and thrilling chases. The plot revolves around needing to bring an artifact back to the future and stop an invading alien species from terraforming the Earth. The time travel premise allows for some unusual imagery, recontextualizing Wuxia-like tropes in a modern setting and bringing modern weapons to the 13th century. Korea's #1 action star Ma Dong-seok headlined two big 2024 actioners, both directed by Hyo Myung-hang, namely Badland Hunters and The Roundup Punishment. Hyo is a renowned action designer who has worked on films such as The Good, The Bad, The Weird and Train to Busan, and he brings a willingness to explore more facets of Ma's physical abilities, along with a lean and efficient approach to choreography. Badland Hunters contains a couple of satisfying scenes, but some directing choices get in the way, like the inexplicable shaky cam. The Roundup 4 is more recommendable, with some truly impressive fight scenes, especially that final 2 vs 1 showdown in the plane. Can't say I'm much of a fan of the plot of these films, but Ma's charming charisma mostly makes up for it. More interesting for me thematically was Lee Sung-wan's late sequel to his 2015 hit Veteran, this time titled I, the Executioner. Reuniting the cop team led by Hwang Jung-min, Leo took a somewhat darker route here, weaving a tapestry of issues related to vigilante justice, to unfair leniency, and to how modern media turn murders and violence into spectacle. It throws captivating moral questions in the face of police ethics, but does so through kinetic chases, tumbles down public stairs, one hell of a slick rainy rooftop brawl, and an extended climatic fight in a tunnel. If they make a third one, perhaps Leo could drop the obvious twists and cut down on the split diopters, because I think he easily broke Brian De Palma's record here. Be that as it may, Lee Sung-wan's unwavering commitment to delivering high-end crowd-pleasing blockbusters continues to impress, so I'll continue watching his film.
적선의 규모는 총 500여 척으로 외란 이후 최대 규모였다.
Capping the historical naval trilogy, Noryang, Dealy Sea from director Kim Han-min offered more military strategy talks and naval battles, but also a good bit of hand-to-hand and weapons-based fighting, surprisingly. The film adopts the same structure as the previous entries, namely a lengthy setup followed by a massive battle that stands out because of the director's obsession with minute details and battle tactics. As entertaining as ever for the series if you're into this. Other Korean blockbusters included Kim Jong-hwan's Officer Black Belt, which was a bit of a personal disappointment given the filmmaker's previous works, but still solid enough to make for an interesting watch, as well as the much more conventional, unsurprising but competent action comedy Mission Cross. Speaking of which, there was no shortage of action comedies from around the world this year. One of the most discussed was perhaps The Fall Guy, a movie which action cinema author and academic Tico Romao found particularly interesting.
The Fall Guy, I like it for 3 reasons. The first reason is that it has a good self-reflexive take on the action film and what makes a film an action film. Also, I like it for its behind-the-scenes look at stunts and the work that stunt people do in terms of making those stunts. And finally, I think it actually has a really good romantic plot that drives the story that makes it all-around an entertaining film.
Make some bad decisions. Yes!
Several legacy sequels to big franchises also came out of Hollywood, most notably Bad Boys 4 from directing duo Adil El Arbi and Bilal Fallah. A vastly different beast than the Michael Bay entries, of course, but I found it more convincing than Part 3, with a couple of nice ideas thrown into the mix. But I think Nicolas Laquerrière, writer of 2024 French actioner Elias, has a bit more to say on the matter.
Là, on retrouve tout ce qui fait la série, je trouve, avec de l'humour d'assez mauvais goût. Un Martin Lawrence en roue libre totale, surtout en VF, n'en déplaise. Des scènes d'action assez folles, le délire du crocodile, du grand délire, de la recherche dans les plans qui fait un peu penser à Michael Bay dans ses grands jours de folie. Donc non, vraiment un bon moment, une bonne surprise, un bon retour de la saga avec nos bons vieux acteurs qui commencent à accuser leur âge mais qui sont toujours aussi forts. Mention spéciale à Beekeeper et aussi à Tigréienne de Jérémy Guez qui j'ai trouvé une très bonne surprise façon GTA francilien. Bravo, bravo, bravo.
You know, this is very embarrassing.
And there was also Beverly Hills Cop Axel F, a solid enough exercise in nostalgia that turned out to be fairly well written and quite funny, mostly thanks to Eddie Murphy's commitment.
Did you say Foley?
Taiwan contributed 2 films to the genre this year, with the black comedy thriller The Pig, the Snake and the Pigeon, a film that takes a few daring turns as the story progresses. The first half includes some good action, while the second part goes places I did not expect. The reversed heist film Breaking and Re-Entering served up some good laughs and good action if you're into its brand of absurdist comedy. Meanwhile, stuntman turned director J.J. Perry released his new film The Killer's Game, a mix of romance, comedy and action that's not entirely successful in exploiting the strength of his all-star cast, but makes for a pleasant watch nonetheless. My favorite character was probably Scott Adkins' Scottish assassin, who really brought down the house.
You're gonna be alright, Lonnie. It's just a scratch, lad. Lonnie! Fuck!
Speaking of Scott Adkins, he headlined 2 movies this year, namely the efficient single-location sniper thriller Take Cover and the ambitious one-take action sequel One More Shot. Directed by British filmmaker James Nunn, the latter is an interesting exercise in stamina, where physical exhaustion and willpower become the primary factors in fleshing out the main characters. Adkins is on his A-game, and although the film's pace suffers at times, the result remains remarkable. A statement that I think film critic Brandon Strusnik would agree with.
My pick for, maybe not my favorite action of 2024, but the one that I kind of think is the most underseen, underappreciated, is One More Shot, directed by James Nunn, starring Scott Adkins, everyone's favorite. Perhaps not underseen by the action community as a whole, but as usual with a guy like Adkins, he's always going to be that guy that we kind of feel like we're always singing the praises of, but the wider film world or Hollywood or things like that never really give him his due, aside from, you know, his great performance in John Wick Chapter 4. But I love One More Shot because, like the first, there's just such a fantastic diversity of stunts in it. It could be so gimmicky with the one take of it all. You know, of course it's not one take, there's cuts here and there. But, you know, it could rely on that gimmick, but James Nunn never does that. You're constantly feeling these fresh moments of, you know, just a different stunt here, a different stunt there. It's not just, you know, gunplay. It's not just fighting. It's not just, you know, Scott falling down a set of stairs. It's all of the above. And I think that's just, it's such a special movie in that way. And I think, like the John Wick movies, you know, like even the fake oneer in Extraction 2 from a few years back, that diversity of stunt work is what I always appreciate about something like One More Shot. Because, like I said, you could rely on, you know, one kind of action sort of set piece, but they know that they have Scott Adkins. They have the human special effect, as Action for Everyone's Mike Scott has called him for years. And so you can have him fight, you can have him shoot guns, you can have him do all kinds of amazing things. And I really love it. And I think, you know, if this series goes on forever and they want to make a one-take movie set in every kind of setting on Earth, I'd love it.
No! No! Come on! Go! Go! Go!
The direct-to-video action scene is more dynamic than ever, as demonstrated by one of the very best action films of the year, Bran Foster's Life After Fighting. The Australian production focuses on Alex Faulkner, former martial arts champion turned instructor who finds himself embroiled in a sordid case of trafficking and must defend his dojo against a group of dangerous criminals. After a career in stunts, Foster delivers an incredibly well-choreographed indie gem that pours its heart out to the audience. The candid script, characters, and melodrama all work just well enough to carry the narrative to their kinetic highs, and boy are they dazzling. Foster's action is intense, propulsive, and hits particularly hard. Shooting up to the top of the list of best on-screen fighters in one film, an achievement if there ever was one, and I think Lee Golden from Film Combat Syndicate agrees.
So 2024 has a number of honorable mentions when it comes to action movie favorites. For me, I point directly to Brent Foster's Life After Fighting, the story of a martial arts teacher who goes out of his way to rescue children from a gang of human traffickers. It's not every day that an actor / martial artist / filmmaker in his debut element makes a film as good as this. And every filmmaker with an inherent interest in the martial arts genre dreams of making a movie as good as this one, or possibly better. At about 2 hours runtime, you get the best of what Brent Foster offers for his first time in the director's chair, and on both sides of the camera. This movie is dramatic, compelling, and is full up with some of the most hard-hitting and bone-crunching action you just want more of. I remember seeing The Raid 2 10 years ago with a friend in a movie theater, and the action was so good, I jumped out of my seat. This movie would have had me doing the same thing if I saw it on the big screen, and with a full crowd at that. I really hope we see more of Brent Foster in the near future. And the availability of this film on a physical medium is so limited. If you can at least buy it and own it digitally, go for it. It's worth it.
And now, let's hear it from Life of Action author and Asian cinema expert, Mike Fury.
A bit of an underdog gem is Life After Fighting. So, also a huge fan of the Australian actor and martial artist Brent Foster. This is his directorial debut. He writes, directs, produces, as well as playing the lead role. Surrounds himself with a strong supporting cast, and they tell a very compelling story. So this is really highly recommended. There's a lot of classic martial arts movie tropes, as well as some interesting new creative stuff these guys try. So one that I think people will be discovering over time, and if you're a fan of the genre, highly recommend it.
In fact, the filmmaking is so good, up-and-coming action filmmaker Jordan Santacana wanted to spend a bit more time on one scene in particular.
Hi, I'm Jordan Santacana. I'm a writer and director of short action films and westerns, and I'm here to talk to you about my favorite fight scene of 2024, which is the rematch fight from the incredible film Life After Fighting. Brent Foster imbues this bone-crunching film with so much character and emotion and tension that you could remove the fight scenes from the film and you would still be left with an incredibly emotionally charged thriller.
You're 7 years younger than me, are you? I haven't fought in years. I've had surgery after surgery. Beating me now won't mean a thing. But if I beat you, can you live with that?
What a dope exchange. This fight is a character-driven slugfest. Behind every punch, every kick, every grapple, within 4 minutes we are given full character arcs for both men. The only reason the fight exists is to teach the audience more about the main character. And this is what separates this film from most of action cinema. From a directing standpoint, Brent Foster shoots the fight scenes predominantly on mediums and wides, showing us the full breadth of the choreography and the location around them. And once in a while, giving us some gorgeous Dutch angles when the fight moves to the floor. His camera movement is 100% motivated. He only pans if somebody moves, and he only tilts if he needs to reveal something. It's classical directing, but for action cinema. It's the kind of directing that would make Gene Kelly smile. For me, what really makes it sing are Brent's modern flourishes. For example, there's an incredible shot where he rotates left, rotates right, and rotates left, and it doesn't feel like a director insisting upon himself because he's actually moving with the choreography so that you feel like you're actually there with them. And in my opinion, the main character of a fight scene should never, ever be the director. The main character of a fight scene should be the choreography. Brent Foster understands this on a cellular level. Life After Fighting is out now on all platforms. Please go see it. You're gonna laugh, you're gonna cheer, you're gonna cry. It's an incredible film and one of my favorites from 2024.
Another immaculate on-screen fight scene closed off Chaya Supanarat's feature debut, Bangkok Dog, starring D.Y. Sao and Brian Lee. The two performers had already delivered impressive careers in Hanuman Shadow Master, but I think I'll let filmmaker Stephen C. Miller take over here for a second.
Yo, what's up? Director Stephen C. Miller here. I wanted to take a quick minute to talk about Bangkok Dog. I was lucky enough to be at the premiere and be there with the actors as they saw it for the first time on the big screen. It was a great experience for me. I love the director Chaya. They did such a great job with this movie. DJ was amazing. You had some other great, fantastic fight choreography going on in this film. The story was also super captivating. I love the love triangle that was happening. The movie, to me, fit all of my boxes. It checked everything that I was wanting for in this kind of a movie. Super fun.
Other streaming films of note include the German brawler 60 Minutes, a tight, race against time, fighter on the run DTV that takes its protagonist from one fight to the next with propelling energy. The choreographies are good, even though they lack variety and eventually end up looking too much alike, but it certainly makes for an easy enough watch. A bit more ambitious was Land of Bad from William Eubank, the director of Under Water, who here joins forces with Liam Hemsworth and Russell Crowe for a solid tactical military drama. No deep reflection on the meaning of war or its consequences, just some tense, thrilling survival genre fare. John Woo, whose 2023 film Silent Night I really enjoyed, released his own remake of The Killer this year, this time set in France. Look, I don't think there's really any point comparing it to the original here. The original was a stone cold classic that will never be dethroned in Woo's filmography, so I took this one for what it was. A vaguely Melville-influenced take on the original's premise that Woo tried to have a bit of fun with. The project of a remake had been in the works for so many years, going back all the way to the 90s when Walter Hill had been attached to direct, with Richard Gere and Denzel Washington as the leads. The end result now is largely forgettable, with a couple of entertaining moments if you're not too demanding.
There you are. You are a beast.
What should have been another streaming release but ended up coming out in theaters, thanks to Jordan Peele, was Monkey Man, Dave Patel's directorial debut. The difficult production made the headlines after Peele's company helped it find new distribution following Netflix's unwillingness to release the film. I really enjoyed it personally, but I'm going to let a true professional tell you why it's worth your while.
Just one small ember can burn down everything.
Hi there, my name is Will Gilby. I'm the writer and director of a film called Jericho Ridge, and I'm here to talk a little bit about Monkey Man, which is one of my favourite films of the year. This is Dev Patel's directorial debut, and I've got all my fingers crossed it's not going to be his last film, and we're going to see plenty more from him. It seems like he came at this with so much ambition. It's not just an action film. The story is threaded and layered with a strong socio-economic component. He's definitely got something to say. The cinematography is energetic and vibrant, blisteringly inventive, and all the time Dev's bringing the pain. Bearded, gaunt, feline, he's never been cooler in my very humble opinion. The action is energetic, bone-crunching, and really nicely put together. When his character Kid stabs up two bodyguards in a lift to Rivers of Babylon and then bites down on a knife to jam it into the guy's throat, I must have rewound that 5 or 6 times. Just incredible. This is a film that feels like it was in post-production for a year. The editing is so layered and creative. The sequence where Dev Patel is fight training with a bag of rice, and it's cross-cutting with flashbacks to his childhood, a sermon, and violence across the country is some of the most thunderously powerful editing I've seen on a cinema screen since the finale of Whiplash. Genuinely blew my mind. Just an incredible sequence with so much to say and so much going on behind the action. It's kind of also amazing considering how film this good is, considering how nightmarish a shoot apparently was. A planned Mumbai shoot switched at the last minute to Indonesia due to COVID, also losing the production team, their production designer, a cinematographer, and the original stunt team. The financier went bankrupt. Dev Patel broke his hand on day 2 of filming. He fractured his toes before the shoot, got an eye infection, and tore his shoulder. So congratulations to everyone involved, and especially Dev Patel. It was worth it, mate. This is awesome. Get this man another film, please, and fast.
Although many commentators have said that Monkey Man's politics were quite muddled, it appears censorship in India preferred not releasing it at all without explicitly banning it. The lack of release was mostly not related to its violence, however. Since another ultra-violent film got theatrical distribution. You've guessed it, I am of course referring to Kill. I already talked about the film myself in last year's video, but since it only opened wide in 2024, it's only fair to bring it up again this year. First, I'll let Jonathan Root, senior lecturer in film studies at the University of Greenwich, say a few words about it.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Root, senior lecturer in film studies at the University of Greenwich and author of The Paths of Zatoichi. One of the best films I saw this year at the cinema was Kill, directed by Nikhil Nagesh Bhatt, starring Laquerrière in an astounding feature film debut, and with action choreography by both India's Parvez Sheikh and South Korea's See Young-oh. I teach world cinema classes at Greenwich and usually use Bollywood musicals to introduce students to the world of Hindi language cinema, but I've never heard of any film this bloody being released from India until I saw the trailer for Kill. The full film did not disappoint. It is one of many great action films set on a train. It might not be perfect, but it does have to be seen to be believed, and it definitely aims to match and possibly outdo the violent choreography of The Raid 1 and 2.
As Jonathan said, Kill is an outlier in the landscape of Indian cinema, for its violence of course, but also because of the treatment of its characters. The hero is a highly trained commando who completely loses it halfway through the runtime and starts acting like a killing machine, while the film repeatedly spends time showing the bandits mourning their own. Questions of class and caste are not overtly expressed, but exist nonetheless, with the villains all belonging to a lower class than the heroes. In addition, it is rare for an Indian actioner featuring a soldier as the lead to never glorify the army, quite the opposite in the end, or turn into a cinematic elation of patriotism. Beyond Kill, I must confess that 2024 was a weaker year overall for Indian action films in my opinion, especially compared to 2023. The biggest blockbusters, movies like Fighter, Indian 2, Singham Again, Kanguva, or Badamiyan Chotimiyan, failed to live up to expectations, consistently playing it safe or already feeling outdated. That being said, some of them, like Kalki 2898 AD, Devara, or The Greatest of All Time, still offered a few memorable scenes. Kalki in particular was an interesting project production-wise, taking the Telugu industry further than it had ever gone before visually in the sci-fi genre.
Fire है तू Fire नहीं Wild fire है Boom!
The most satisfying Indian blockbuster of the year for me, however, was probably Pushpa 2 The Rule, the sequel to Sukumar's 2021 Telugu hit starring Allu Arjun. Overflowing with gorgeous shots and crowd-pleasing moments, this sequel suffers from a little bit of repetition and occasional laziness in terms of continuity, but keeps things light and fun throughout. I know the decision to veer off course narratively in the second half was off-putting to a lot of viewers, but it worked for me eventually, since the emotional payoff made sense for the characters. Pushpa remains one of the most charming anti-heroes to come out of India lately, and the film delivers 3 major action set pieces, the last of which had me screaming in disbelief. Not necessarily in terms of pure execution, but because it commits to a bit and pushes it further than I thought it would. Truly something that could only be seen in an Indian blockbuster nowadays. Big action, big emotions, big masala entertainment. With that said, I think it is in slightly smaller scale productions that most of the year's true gems emerged, especially from the Tamil industry, with no less than 3 films that I think will be remembered fondly for a long time. Ryan, directed by famous actor Dhanush, stands out as a surprise, powerful punch to the guts. Boasting magnificent visuals and a sure direction that elevates its uneven revenge story, the film ends up being one of the most accomplished of the year. Some characters unfortunately die too soon for the emotions Dhanush is aiming for to land perfectly, but the superstar makes up for it with his astonishing action scenes, an avalanche of raw, violent fights immortalized through fairly unique and memorable scenography and mise-en-scène.
You believe, devil? I am the devil, and you will call me.
Dhanush headlined another remarkable film this year, namely
Captain Miller,
directed by prodigy filmmaker Arun Mateswaran, whose 2022 punishing rape and revenge film Sani Ka Idam was among my favorites of that year. Captain Miller takes the tried and tested formula of the local hero rising against the British colonizers to explosive heights. Mateswaran is obviously gifted at crafting compelling units of action and manages to elevate his humble protagonist to the status of mythical hero with ease. The film's non-linear structure is a disservice to its emotional charge, however, as it never reaches the same levels of immersion as the finest in the genre. Still, Captain Miller stands among the most memorable mass entertainers to have come out of India in 2024. And then there was Tanghalan, starring the always magnetic Vikram, a film set during the British rule when a local tribe assists colonizers in finding gold. They find a sorceress in their way, whose magic will put them to the test. Director Ranjit delivers his most ambitious film yet, full of symbolism and socio-political subtext. Formally speaking, though the movie is imperfect, it does try some things we have rarely seen before, like the final battle, in which magic allows for the setting to switch back and forth between day and night and across centuries. A truly captivating film, the likes of which every industry in the world needs more of. In Bollywood, it's the more grounded, brutal and gritty actioners that stood out this year. Yoda, a boilerplate plane hijacking thriller, includes cumbersome patriotic themes, but also features cool and intense action design and execution. The upside-down plane fight in particular is worth noting. Action star John A.R.M, recently seen as the antagonist in Pathaan, returned with a dark, realistic effort named Veda, which tackles caste-related issues and offers A.R.M an opportunity to flex his acting muscles as well as his biceps. It is no game changer, but it does feature a few remarkable moments, such as this aerial oneer. In my opinion, one of Tollywood's most interesting this year was probably Saripodhaa Sanivaaram, or Surya's Saturday, from filmmaker Vivek Athreya. At first glance, a run-of-the-mill vigilante movie with a twist, a complex set of behavioral rules that prevents the protagonist from fighting on days other than Saturday, the film actually turns out to be a fairly unexpected call to action through grassroots movements, rather than a glorification of vigilante justice. The exposition is way too long though, but if you can get through it, the film as a whole is a pretty good time. Malayalam cinema also included a couple of noteworthy actioners this year, for example with Avesham, an extremely fun masala entertainer with a powerhouse central performance. The action scenes are not always the cleanest or tightest in geography and editing, but they run on sheer energy, of which there is plenty. Similarly, the director of The Great Gladiator II, among other gems, made his return this year with Malaikotai Valiban, a film that stands out thanks to the unparalleled beauty of its visual compositions. Here's what Indian critic Uday Bhatia has to say about it.
The film I'd like to highlight is Lijo Joe's Belisari's Malaikotai Valiban. It's a Malayalam film set sometime in 18th or 19th century India. It stars Mohanlal as this kind of strong man who goes from village to village getting into scrapes. So if you watched Tamil or Telugu actioners, you'll know that they're almost ludicrously macho. Lijo's tone is something much more playful. Take, for example, the opening fight where Valiban is matched against a local wrestling champion. His takedown has an ornateness that is almost like something in a Zhang Yimou movie. The thing that sets the film apart is the sheer variety of styles and influences that come into play. There's clearly some Leone, maybe some Hodorowski. There is a set piece that is pure wuxia film wire work. There is a lot of Kurosawa's Sanjuro in Valiban as a kind of semi-comic hero. And but there's also this crazy fight scene where two fighters take on Valiban in a sort of hybrid upside down formation that could have come out of a Shaw Brothers movie. So Lijo is one of the best purely visual directors working in India today, and he takes the sort of stop-start action that you will see quite a lot of in Indian action cinema, and he transforms it into something absolutely unique. There's a sequence where Mohanlal and his posse are running through a marketplace. Everything around them is exploding because a Portuguese Rani is firing cannons at them. It's the most electrifying thing I've seen all year.
Actor Tovino Thomas, who headlined the great Talumala a couple of years ago, was finally back with A.R.M, the very ambitious directorial debut of filmmaker Jitin Lal. Also stunning to look at, the film is more of a conventional masala entertainer and suffers from one-dimensional supporting characters, but remains worth a watch in my opinion. One of the most striking Malayalam actioners of the year was actually the surprisingly gruesome and violent Marco from director Hadif Adeni, starring Uni Mukundan. So you're seeing my face right now because there aren't that many images of the film online, just short teasers, and the film just came out in theaters just a few days before we're releasing this video. But the film has, it's set in the world of gangsters. They are gold traffickers, they have business deals, betrayal, revenge. The story isn't that interesting, but the film stands out by ranking among the most violent to have ever come out of India, outranking Animals from last year and giving Kill a run for its money. I had never seen so many severed limbs, slit throats and cruel execution coming from Mollywood before. The second half of the film includes a couple of really memorable set pieces. For example, when the protagonist has to go up a staircase while dispatching dozens of opponents. So during this scene, the director suddenly ditches the music altogether and shifts to a kind of handheld style of filming, mostly handheld, there are other techniques as well, and creates one of the most exciting fake wonders that we've seen in recent years. Overall, Marco avoids using the speed ramping and the slow-mo that most Indian blockbusters are known for, and if you can suspend disbelief just enough to forgive some CGI blood and that trope that, the trope of opponents waiting for their turn in group fights, then there is a lot of fun to be had if cinematic cruelty and gore are your thing. Philosophically speaking, I think Marco is the complete opposite of a film like 100 Yards, for instance, because Marco revels in its brutality, so much so that it ends up leaving action movie territory to become a violence movie. All of which makes Marco a film that goes much further than any film in Malayalam cinema before it in the action genre. As far as Kannada language cinema is concerned, the movie Bagheera delivered a fairly conventional and slightly violent take on the masked vigilante trope, but nothing too out of the ordinary. Plus, it pales compared to Ryo Song-hwan's I, the Executioner, which tackles similar themes. However, If you want out of the ordinary, have you heard of Martin?
Martin! Hey, Martin!
Let me just show you a couple of scenes and decide for yourselves if that is something you're willing to experience in full.
और उससे भी ज्यादा डेंजरस ये है कि he is an Indian.
On the other side of India, all the way up in the north, Assamese filmmaker Kenny Basumatari released his indie action comedy Local Kung Fu 3, a perfect example of what regional industries can accomplish on a low budget with heart, talent, and hard work. At its level, the film impresses by unleashing wave after wave of propelling, dynamic action scenes upon the unsuspecting audience. Wide, clean shots capture cool choreos, culminating in a lengthy showdown composed of ambitious set pieces. The comedy is mostly cultural, but the more serious plot points about the forced displacement of local population, the erasure of local culture by wealthy moguls from other regions of India, will be universally understood. The film has yet to secure international distribution, but fingers crossed it will. In the meantime, you can listen to what Indian film champion George Hurtado has to say about the film.
Nobody does big, outrageous action like India, but that's not all this incredibly diverse country has to offer. If we just dig a little deeper and examine some of its lesser-known corners, we can uncover some wildly creative filmmakers with an immense passion for action as well. You've probably never heard of Local Kung Fu 3, and it's even less likely that you've seen it or either of its predecessors, but it is about time that this hidden gem and its creators get the spotlight. Writer, director, actor, choreographer, Kenny Basumatari and his trusty troupe of Kung Fu madmen started as a martial arts club in the remote northeastern Indian state of Assam, but the decision to make a feature film back in 2013 proved to be among the best he's ever made. Blending high-energy, creatively shot and choreographed martial arts with side-splitting comedy, Kenny and his team, which includes his star pupil, the high-flying Montu Diori, have created a franchise that gets better with every film. From the first Local Kung Fu, which was completed with a budget of less than $2,000, to this latest entry, which still manages to come in under $100,000, Kenny and Local Kung Fu 3 prove that passion trumps budget every time.
2024 was actually full of such little surprises from around the world, modest productions that stood out within their industries. Germany, for instance, released a new adaptation of the Nibelung saga, the most famous iteration of which still being the one from Fritz Lang. Hagen, im Tal der Nibelungen, looks shockingly good for a German production, the country having long moved away from such cinematic endeavors. Court intrigue and classical tragedy take up most of the runtime. The film does deliver a couple of solid battles and fights fit for its budget. Here's hoping German producers start investing more in genre films again. In neighboring France, the very hard-hitting Farang, aka Mayhem, came out last year, but it was only released in 2024 in most territories, which is why Sayara director Jean Evrenol wanted to say a few words about it.
My favorite martial arts movie last year was definitely Farang, Mayhem, from Xavier Gans, the crazy French director, the director of my favorite French New Extremity film, Frontiers. Well, when a horror film director makes a martial arts movie, that's really close to my heart. That's why I really like this film. But also, I think in Farang, you feel the struggle, you feel the pain, you feel the damage of the martial arts scenes and the whole journey of the revenge more than anything else. That really gets to me. I think many of you would agree the best martial arts film of the last decade or the last 2 decades, The Raid from Gareth Evans, especially the first half of that movie, The action is really swift, to the point, boom, boom, boom. I mean, that's what actual fighting really is. I mean, I'm a big fan of Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, Bruce Lee movies, WWF, wrestling, everything. But real fighting is different. Real fighting is messy, it's sloppy, it's like pushing and pulling, and like it's shorter. So I think Farang was the one that came closest to that kind of like fighting feeling. Also, the very end, the very, very end, after all that damage, after all, like, you really think that our hero is done. What he does at the very end, I'm not going to spoil it for you, was amazing. This year, my favorite martial arts movie was definitely Farang.
Meanwhile, talented filmmaker Florent Emilio Siri, known internationally for his movies The Nest and Hostage, finally made his return to the action genre with the excellent, anxiety-inducing thriller Elias. The titular character is a former Special Forces soldier who is hired as a bodyguard for a wealthy family in hiding. When things go south, his cognitive issues make him the perfect scapegoat. The film is a lesson in narrative economy, introducing its plot and characters with disarming ease. The intense, paranoid, contained actioner features a gripping performance from Rushdie Zem, as well as several propulsive and hard-hitting set pieces, the likes of which I would love to see more of in French cinema. I hope Elias will be properly distributed outside of France in the near future.
Tu vas m'aider, Maddy?
I'd be remiss not to mention Michel Blanchard's feature debut, the breathtaking thriller Night Call, or La Nuit se traîne in French. Set in Brussels, it focuses on Maddy, a young locksmith who one night unwillingly finds himself embroiled in criminal activities involving dirty money, murders, and manhunts. The gripping action thriller never lets up, reveling in the immersive power of pitting an average Joe against ruthless criminals. And I think it uses the backdrop of demonstrations against police brutality in a rather smart way to enhance the tension. Plus, it's amazing how good the film looks in terms of lighting and cinematography. Another French-language film that will hopefully get worldwide distribution. The issue of availability, even for recent films, remains a bone of contention for cinephiles. Some movies simply never or hardly ever travel beyond their home audience, which I think is a shame. For instance, this year I saw an action film from Nepal called Agastya Chapter 1 from director Saurav Chaudhary. The 2.5-hour long story is centered around a man who, after experiencing immense trauma, must grapple with troubled mind and starts roaming around aimlessly. His brother eventually sets out on a quest to find him and help him out. The secrets he uncovers in the process turn the journey into a colossal struggle. The film's action is just okay, switching back and forth between typical masala formalisms and undercranked fisticuffs. The film is at its most interesting during the many, rather long dialogue-free segments which efficiently give the audience a way to empathize with the main character's ordeal. It's a bit of a shame the film doesn't have more faith in its fight scenes and performers, because they seem perfectly capable of shining without the undercranking, and because the narrative as a whole is remarkably ambitious. In Turkey, horror filmmaker Jean Evrenoğlu tried his hand at the extreme revenge genre with the brutal, gory flick Sayara this year, the story of an immigrant woman from Turkmenistan who will need to use the combat skills her father taught her to avenge the death of a loved one. The protagonist is an expert in martial arts, but the film is not a technical demonstration, focusing much more on the grueling physical consequences of the hits and slashes, rather than on the visual appeal of action. It is a visceral ride that features some of the most sadistic, but also some of the most earned kills of 2024. Strong badass women shown this year in several other high-profile films. Timo Gianto, director of fan favorites The Night Comes For Us and The Big Four, returned once more to Netflix with the brutal, corrosive assassin survival thriller The Shadow Strays. The filmmaker challenged himself to make an extreme action film starring young actors who had no prior experience or training taking it upon himself and his stunt team to get them ready to punch, slash and shoot across the screen for 2 hours. Aurora Ribeiro and her castmates really rose to the challenge, beautifully executing Mohamed Zifran's action choreography. Let's hear what the original action film critic Outlaw Vern has to say about it.
I'm here to talk about one of my favorite movies of the year, The Shadow Strays by Timo Tjahjanto. One of the things I love about this movie is that it's a complete epic of action. It takes every element of action and takes it further than you expect. It's got long and involved fight scenes with really complex choreography. There's a wide variety of weapons that are used. There are guns, but not too many, and sometimes they're used as blunt weapons. There's a lot of blades, a lot of gore, thumbs going into eyeballs, picking up a frying pan and using it in multiple ways, like as a shield and as a hook and as a blunt weapon. Explosions, great villain who puts on a weird mask when he does something evil, and he seems like a character out of a manga or something. And the best thing about it is that it's got all of the action, but it also has some poetry to it. That's the best kind of action movie, I think, and it's all of Timo Tjahjanto's movies are like this, but it's got this great lead, this teenage assassin, Agent Number 13, played by Aurora Ribeiro, and she gets some downtime away from killing people, starts helping an orphan neighbor, and starts to question her indoctrination, and that's my favorite type of movie. You've got every excuse for her to be involved in great violence, but then also you get to be more thoughtful about it. So highly recommend it. Definitely watch that movie at least once.
Hey guys, Mike Fury here. My action movie highlight of the year would have to be The Shadow Strays. Now, I'm a big fan of the writer-director Timo Tjahjanto, as I'm sure many of you are too, and I really think he's gone above and beyond and outdone himself this time around. So he obviously gets a ton of credit for the action and the fight scenes, which is very much deserved. But for me, I think it goes beyond that. He's a great storyteller within the action scenes. The way the camera moves, the choices the characters make within the fight scenes, it really communicates a lot. And there's a lot of interesting stuff like that in this one. So if you're a fan of his previous work, definitely check it out. If you're new to his work, this is a great entry point. So either way, highly recommended.
The world of The Shadow Strays fast-tracks narrative development to imply many things about the diegesis through action, but if you're on Tjahjanto's wavelength, you're sure to have a blast.
I want them back!
Speaking of blasts, master filmmaker George Miller took us back once more to the wasteland with Furiosa, the prequel spin-off to the legendary Fury Road entry in the Mad Max franchise. Vastly different structurally and narratively, Furiosa is yet another exercise in myth-making and an opportunity to question our relationship with them. I personally largely prefer the previous film in terms of visuals and narrative because Furiosa feels like a safer film, almost devoid of all the insane swings that had made Fury Road such a sensation. Still, George Miller remains one of the best filmmakers working today, so when he goes all out, pretty much nothing can compete. In a more urban, present-day setting, Chisato and Mahiro, the two professional killers of the Baby Assassins franchise, were back for a third film. This time, it seems like young director Yugo Sakamoto found the perfect balance between slacker antics, cute humor, and blistering fight choreography with his second sequel. But I've said enough. Let me give the stage to the Shogun Supreme himself, Frankie Balboa.
With how remarkable this year has been for action cinema from, every region almost, it seems like. Baby Assassins, Nice Days, there's something truly special. And that is not only doing the third film, but somehow making the third film better than the previous entries. And we all know when it comes to franchises, it's pretty difficult to do a good sequel or a follow-up to the second one. So they killed it. Yugo Sakamoto and Keisuke Tsunomura definitely went all out because we are used to seeing them being very vibrant in the slice of life world with a lot of comedy in it. And what we saw in the third film, this dark tone, we got to see the maturity of both of the characters. Not only in that, but in the action choreography where they're a lot more tactical. they're way more precise, and they're way more experienced. So even the action choreography is very different. And on top of that, we finally get an emotional attachment to them. It's very hard to explain, but the emotional toll that you feel watching this film is also displayed on screen. And like Alex says, action is emotion, and this film does that perfectly.
Action designer Kensuke Sonomura has once again outdone himself beyond expectations in a quest for renewed cognitive stimulation through action design, camera work, and a meticulous choreography that relies on setups and payoffs, on the physical and spatial relations between bodies, and on the synergy between images and music. There were other Japanese actioners of note, like the fun, sleek new adaptation of City Hunter, another Yankee romp called G-Men, the critically acclaimed manga adaptation Golden Kamuy, and the latest chapters in the Kingdom Saga. Sorry for only mentioning them, but I wanted to spend more time on Kensuke Sonomura's latest feature, Ghost Killer. One of my favorite action designers, Sonomura had previously directed Hydra and Bad City, which I've talked about in previous yearly recaps. This time, he works off a script from Yugo Sakamoto himself and gives center stage to Akari Takaishi, one half of the Baby Assassins duo. In Ghost Killer, a professional hitman, played by the always great Masanori Mimoto, dies, and his ghost becomes attached to Takaishi's student character, whom he can control when she lets him, temporarily making her an unexpectedly skilled fighter. The unlikely pair eventually join forces to take down a band of assassins through escalating shootouts and fistfights. Kensuke Sonomura's signature style is ubiquitous, whether people fight barehanded or with guns. It's all about looking for the most dynamic way of delivering kinetic, propelling action scenes. Motion reigns supreme as characters keep lunging forwards, switching tactics, and testing their opponents for an opening. Once a fight starts, they cannot remain still, and the camera follows suit. The choreography is detailed, precise, at a crossroads between the necessity for the performers to hit their cues and the realism brought by the prevalence of spontaneous-looking reactions. In the end, the synergy between Sakamoto's character work and Sonomura's propelling kinetics results in a highly entertaining, unstoppable display of what makes modern Japanese action cinema so compelling. Ghost Killer has only played a handful of festivals so far, so keep an eye out for it in 2025.
Red one is on the move.
Evening, ladies. What are you so excited about? Of course, your boyfriend's here.
I know what you're thinking. You're wondering why I have not mentioned your favorite actioner of the year. Well, this is not an exhaustive list, though I try to cover as much ground as possible. But there are so many action movies coming out every year, mentioning all of them will take hours. Dune Part 2, for instance, contains a couple of close-quarter combat scenes, but Villeneuve does not generally seem to be very interested in cinematic action. Boy Kills World had interesting drone work and incredible action choreography, featuring very skilled fighters, plus a great performance from Jessica Roth, but everything is unfortunately drowned out in a sea of excruciatingly unfunny humor.
You have reached your final destination.
Other films had breathtaking action moments within a narrative that was not primarily interested in action. Rebel Ridge, for example, contains a gripping, beautiful demonstration of how force can be used without deadly outcomes in narratives that question violence. The working-class Chinese thriller A Long Shot from Pengfei used its brilliant final shootout as an expression of societal upheaval. And cult Japanese filmmaker Gakuryu Ishii gave us a duel between boxmen that must be seen to be believed. At the end of the day, what I'm really interested in is not really to let everyone know which action films were my favorites of the year, but to try and engage with the yearly corpus as a whole. What did action movies attempt this year? How did they engage with the fundamental tensions governing the genre? What did their potential evolutions bring to the table narratively and artistically? For instance, in 2024, filmmakers used the action genre to explore the consequences of physical violence in a variety of ways. As an unwanted collateral outcome to a martial art form in 100 Yards, and by extension, a possible failure or shortcoming of said art form to have a positive effect on society in a given context, or as the primal expression of despair and the desire to live by the most basic human decency in Sayara, or as the unavoidable, gruesome consequence of deep societal inequalities in Kill, or even as a heightened visual representation of a culture's struggle to exist and preserve their way of life in Twilight of the Warriors. Action was used as a catalyst to crystallize various emotions, from deep friendship in Baby Assassin 3 to a darkly nihilistic outlook of life in Bursting Point, to the call of individual freedom in The Shadow Strays, the pain that comes with the life violence in Elias, or the euphoric adrenaline rush that imagined violence can provide in Escape from the 21st Century. Action is a genre that can become the foundation to myth-making, as demonstrated by Furiosa or Blade of Fury. It can become our sole weapon to counteract horror, like in Werewolves, and continue to be the most universal way to exalt national ideas and pride, as is the case in Captain Miller. Formal innovations usually occur on the fringes, with films such as Roadhouse, a movie that did attempt something fairly unusual technically speaking, but which for many viewers and critics failed to harness this newfound power in meaningful ways. Experiments like Aggro Drift might be grating to some, and I cannot say that I am a fan myself, but I am glad they exist. Pushing the boundaries has always been and always will be an integral part of genre cinema. A film like the Gabonese production Koto Ekenge et les Descendants will no doubt appear too cheap or simple in its craft for some audiences, but its existence within its specific industry should be noted as a sign, among many others, that African cinema in its vast plurality has been showcasing a deep desire to make more and more action films for a while now. The way the Indian paradigm has shifted over the past 10 or so years is fascinating in that sense. Previously confined to genre festivals, Indian blockbusters now find distribution in cinemas in multiple territories. Limited releases, yes, but theatrical releases nonetheless. I have no doubt that the desire from the diaspora to enjoy Indian films as well has played a role, but there is also a certain desire to make these films accessible to audiences worldwide. I wouldn't be surprised if other industries decide to take a similar route in the coming years. Egypt, for instance, a country that has been making numerous action movies every year for many years, is already releasing actioners that find success beyond its borders, like this year's Sons of Risk 3 from Tarek El Arian. In today's world, language is but a temporary barrier. Derivative productions are likewise not to be dismissed so easily when casting a serious look on a cinematic genre. They translate the trends of the time and open windows for us into what studios and filmmakers think audiences want. Pengfei's films don't reinvent the wheel, but their reception is a pretty obvious sign that Chinese audiences and action fans worldwide appear to be responsive to a style of filming that syncs the camera movements to those of the performers in an attempt to offer more visual stimuli. Yugo Sakamoto's style could be seen as somewhat similar, a sign perhaps that younger audiences could be used to processing more visual information quicker than their predecessors. It certainly seems to me like that would go hand in hand with the tendency of action choreography to become always more complex and layered. Kensuke Tsunomura, Pengfei, Kenji Tanigaki, among the biggest names in the industry, prioritize the continuity of motion and the abundance of movements on screen, rooting their work in known martial shapes, but displaying a strong desire to innovate and push performers and possibilities always further. So, that's about it for this year, I think. As usual, there are some actioners that I was not able to watch yet, which I hope to be able to catch up on in the next few months. Thanks so much to all my guests who kindly agreed to partake this year, and as always, thank you for watching this yearly recap video. If you enjoyed it, like it, share it, and don't hesitate to leave a comment. In any case, I am eager to discover what the genre has in store for us in 2025. My watchlist for most anticipated films is already absurdly large, but with movies such as Gareth Evans' Havoc, Juno Mac's long-delayed Sons of the Neon Night, the last Mission Impossible movie, Kenji Tanigaki's The Furious, and Choi Ark's Legend of the Condor Heroes already confirmed, I have no doubt we will have much to discuss again next year. See you then.